What does it take to be a transformational coach? Or even better, a great transformational coach? So, not everyone who is drawn to the field of life coaching is necessarily ready for transformational coaching. Some people are just not equipped, kind of on an inner plane, to really support others to connect with the deepest part of themselves. And others are not really desiring to be able to support others through the raw, quite messy at times dance of shadow and light that transformation as a personal journey really demands. So if you're drawn to transformational coaching, or if you're wondering, is this even right for you? Then this video is for you. And actually, the key to it might surprise you. Hi, welcome to the Deep Coach channel. I'm Leon Vanderpool, and I'm the founder of the Center for Transformational Coaching. And on this channel, we like to talk about all things related to the journey of awakening and transformation, and how we support that as coaches and transformational workers in the world. So for this video, I want to talk about that question, what makes for a great transformational coach? But before I do that, I want to step back a little bit, create a bit of context for that answer. Because once you understand the context of what we're working with, then the answer will make a lot more sense. So the context, of course, is we're working with transformation, human transformation, personal transformation. And the question is, well, what's that? So in short, and I've got other videos that go into this in much more depth, but in short, personal transformation is a radical restructuring of our sense of self and our purpose and place in this world. And I use that term radical restructuring quite deliberately because it is like a revolution away from conditioned ideas, learned ideas about who we are, the way that life is, and the way that we should show up in this world, to one that is really much more reflective of the essential self, the I at the core of our being, the reality of who we are at an essential level. And that's a journey called transformation, because we're really starting to let go of a lot of conditioned ideas and beliefs and values, which includes patterns of behavior and attitude that were never perhaps really ours to begin with, but we had bought into or just absorbed as we do as children. So understanding that transformation is quite a radical restructuring requires us to go into the depths of ourselves, both into the depth of our mind, which is the way that we make meaning of reality, like the way that our mind makes meaning of our experiences. That's a big piece of it, like why we experience life the way we do, why we have the lessons and the encounters that we do. And just getting deeper into that, we call it our self-concept, which is a psychological term, but you could also call it your inner operating system. So we want to get deep into the inner operating system to really understand what gives rise to the very experience we have in life. That's one side of it. The other piece of it is recognizing that there is this thing called a being level awareness that exists, and we can tap into that. So transformational coaching often starts with that question, who am I being in this moment or in life? Becoming clear or at least tuned into your sense of being, and then looking to make shifts in being or expansions in ways of being so that they become more reflective of the person that you sense you are at an essential level. So there's a mind component and a being component. So we see that transformation of the mind and being is what's occurring when we do transformational work, really deep transformational work. So with that understanding, we can go into that question about, well, what makes them for a great transformational coach? Before I answer that, I just want to touch, though, on something that is related to it. And that is an understanding of some of the misconceptions of what it takes to be a transformational coach. Because as I work with many people coming through the center who are looking at transformational coaching, they have these ideas about what it means to be a transformational coach or even what it takes. And some of those misconceptions are false, or at least erroneous in some way. So it may be helpful for me here just to clarify some of these, so you then, again, understand more clearly why when we talk about transformational coaching, why it is what it is. The first misconception that people have is that it's about having the right tools, skills, or techniques. Because most coach training programs build themselves on this, like frameworks, models, techniques, skills, competencies, like really hammering those in and saying, this is what it takes to be a coach. And it's true. Those are what it takes to be a coach, a life coach. Those are kind of foundational competencies that everybody who is interested in coaching does benefit from learning. But this misconception is that to be a transformational coach or a great transformational coach, I just need to take on a new set of skills, that nothing needs to change in me at any core fundamental level. But if I could just gain these skills or techniques or frameworks, I can walk someone through a transformational journey. And that's the misconception. It's going to take more than that to be a great transformational coach. The second misconception is that if you've learned or trained in some other modalities, then by default, you're doing transformational work. And this is often the case with people who've learned, let's say, systemic coaching or developmental coaching methodologies. They just assume quite easily that they're doing transformational work, particularly if they're seeing progress in their clients. And that progress may be behavioral change, like they're getting better at something. They may stop doing behaviors that are negatively impacting them. They may change their mindset, their emotions may be evening out. So they're seeing progress in people. And because they're seeing change happening, the automatic assumption is, well, therefore I'm doing transformational work. But again, that's a misconception. Because when we talk about doing deep transformational work, we're getting down to that inner operating system, that core level sense of identity. And it's very possible in life to make changes at a surface level to the way you communicate, relate, act, engage, that doesn't really connect to your core identity, that embedded sense of self and your self-worth and your purpose and place in this world, and all the values and beliefs that you have, again, absorbed and lived through for a lifetime. So if we're not getting to that level and making change, transformation, if we're not reconfiguring that level of self-identity, then true human transformation is not necessarily happening. So that's the misconception, that making change at surface level without touching the core identity is the same as doing transformational work. And again, that's not quite true. And this relates to the third misconception, and that is that all change is transformation. You can probably just imagine that's not exactly true. All change is not transformation. Certainly all transformation is change, but not all change is transformation. So the misconception is about the nature of change and the nature of transformation. So if you've made a change in your life to a belief that you carry, or again, you've changed some pattern of behavior that was no longer serving you, maybe the pattern of reactivity, you became more responsive, or the pattern of blaming others, you became more responsible, and you're making change at that level, there may be some touching of that core structure of self-identity, but it doesn't necessarily mean that a radical restructuring is taking place there. So again, to be a great transformational coach, you've got to be able to help people dive to the deepest part of themselves and to really get in touch with that. And when you do that, you're going to get into a place that is, let's just call it sticky. It's that sticky, messy, raw place, which people need to go if they're on a journey to really recognize what is no longer true for themselves and what, in a sense, is emerging as a new or higher truth. And that journey into that part of themselves, that can be hard because it forces us to look at things that we may not want to look at. And I mean that they can be painful. They can be uncomfortable. They can be recognitions of a reality that we have carried and owned to be true for a very long time. And suddenly it is sort of saying, no, this is no longer who I am. This is no longer reflective of who I'm becoming. But to outwork that, that's hard. That's the deep transformational work. It's a kind of healing journey into that deepest part of ourselves. So if you're skimming along at a surface level, making surface level behavior changes or attitude changes, don't necessarily conflate that with transformation. And so then the fourth misconception, and this one will actually lead me right into our answer to that question, what makes for a great transformational coach, is that you can guide someone where you've never been yourself. Translation, I can take someone on a transformational journey into the deepest part of themselves, and yet I have never done that for myself. I can take people into their deepest pains, greatest heartaches, and greatest joys and highest potentials, but I've never done that for myself. So it's a bit akin to like trying to teach someone to deep dive to the ocean floor, but you've never actually done it. In fact, you're trying to help someone deep dive to the ocean floor while you're standing firmly on the beach or maybe in shallow waters. And for some modalities, this works. Again, in a more transactional coaching setting, developmental coaching setting, that can work. Your methodologies and frameworks and tools and techniques and skills can help you move someone along. It's like in therapy or counseling too. A therapist doesn't necessarily have had to experience the disorders or mental health issues that their clients are experiencing in order for them to be of support. But that's not the same in deep transformational work and in deep transformational coaching. And this is the misconception. In this work, if we're going to speak to people and help people dive to the deepest part of themselves, we will have had to do that for ourselves so that we can only, in a sense, take people to the depth that we have been in ourselves. So understanding that misconception, again, I'm starting to begin to point now to the answer to that quite great question, what does it take to be a transformational coach, is the recognition that we can take someone only as far as we've really been ourselves. And the deeper we go in ourselves, the deeper we can take our clients. And to be able to hold a container for that transformational process, which, as I said, is really uncertain, full of trepidation. There can be fear coming in because this restructuring, it begins to peel away all of that self-identity that we've held on to for a lifetime, or it's beginning to reveal that it may not actually be true. So if I'm not that, then who am I? And that maybe is the ultimate question for transformational work, not just the question of being, who do I choose to be, but that much bigger question, who am I? So let me now spend a bit of time delving into the answer to the question, what does it take to be a great transformational coach? The answer is simply commit unwaveringly to your own transformation. So we're working with the axiom that your transformation enables transformation. My transformation enables transformation. Lao Tzu, the great Chinese philosopher, once said something just like that. He said, the greatest gift that you can give the world is that of your own transformation. That's big. So now you're understanding earlier when I was talking about needing to understand the context. It's like, yeah, okay, I can only take people as far as I've been in this journey. And the more that I venture into the depth of myself, the more I am positioning myself to be the way shower, the guide, the coach, the facilitator of other people's journeys into the deepest part of themselves. Because the reality is most of us have not touched that essence level self and have not yet begun to live through it in a very amplified, expansive way, so that we're really in this world as that essential true self. That's still very much an outlier in this world. So going on that journey for yourself then positions you as the way shower, the one who can be the guide for those who have not yet ventured down this still very unknown, uncertain path towards some unknown, uncertain end. Because what is it to be fully transformed? Is it to be enlightened? What is that? We don't necessarily know. So that uncertainty builds trepidation, fear, hesitation. People even resist that call to go down this journey. So we then stand as way showers, as those who can hold the space, as ones who can create powerful containers of possibility for others. So there are some qualities or characteristics that arise as well when you are on your journey and when you've ventured down that path. And these qualities and characteristics are what help position you. They're kind of like the why should I? Well, because here, by venturing down your own transformational journey, you will gain these qualities and characteristics. And the first one is really quite key. It's got to do with a kind of energetic depth that you then come to possess. There's going to be a kind of quality of presence, groundedness that is anchored in being, in a depth of being. And it's stable and it's big and it can hold the bigness of another person's journey. Because if anything, transformation can take people in all kinds of places within themselves, into the darkest, shadowiest parts, into the greatest joys. But you've got to be able to hold all that unflinchingly. You've got to be able to hold a container in which people can touch the deepest, rawest, truest parts of themselves, where great emotion or great pain lies, just as much as you can hold a container for the expansion of possibilities, for wins, for achievements, for breakthroughs. So you've got to be able to hold the bigness of that. And as you go on your own journey, you develop that capacity. It's a being level capacity, and it's grounded so that people can come in as they are and be with you and know that their life is well held. The second quality that you develop by committing to your own transformational journey, and this is a big one, is that you become comfortable in the unknown and comfortable in uncertainty. Because the transformational journey is itself a journey into the unknown, and it is filled with moments of uncertainty. We're letting go of this idea of this known world, the world that we know how to navigate, and we're saying yes to a world that we don't yet fully comprehend. And we're letting go of so many of those self-identity markers that have been the drivers of our life experience. And we're looking to take on new ideas about who we are and the way that life is. But what those are, we don't necessarily know yet. There's no manual for transformation in that way. It's a deeply personal process. So your ability to hold a space in which people can just be in the unknown, be in the uncertainty, and even then be with the fear, the worry, the anxiety that may stir up, that's a massively powerful capacity to have developed. And really, the best way to do that is that you've had to sit in that for yourself. You've had to face the unknown edges of your existence. You've had to let go of the known, the tried, the true, the secure, to venture down this very path. And now again, you can stand as a way shower because you've developed a capacity just to say, yes, this is what discomfort looks like with the unknown. I understand why you're fearing, why you're feeling trepidation, why you're concerned about what this may mean. And that anchoring presence is, again, something so valuable to someone who's navigating this journey, because in the way, then you stand as the light at the end of the tunnel, the one who's walked the fire of experience, that you're not just doing this work because you took a course or you read a good book, but because your inner being understands what it means to live in the unknown. This other quality, this third quality that I want to speak to is probably one of my favorites, is that you develop a higher degree of authenticity. There's a humility that sets in. And when I say by authenticity, what I mean is that this journey is designed, this journey of awakening and transformation is designed to take you into the deepest, truest, realest part of yourself, to connect with that, and to begin to express more of that reality in your creative efforts, in your relationships, in the work you do. So in a sense, it's a journey into authenticity. It's a journey that asks you to strip away pretense, to strip away the masks that you wear, to drop all the markers that are trying to say to the world, this is who I am, and this is what makes me great, and this is what makes me worthy. This is what makes me successful. See, I have all these things. I've accomplished all these things. I've climbed all these mountains. Authenticity is just the ability to be real and true, without pretense, without masks. That is the journey of transformation. And it's what people who are embarking on it, who are saying yes to it, are actually seeking for in themselves. They're done, in a sense, living through false identifiers. They're done living through their ego. And they're ready to say, what does it look like for me to live fully and completely as I am, into my own truths, and to be that in the world? And again, no easy answers for that. But if you, the coach, have never done that, if you are living still through masks and pretense, if you're still out there in the world trying to show everyone how great you are, how successful you've become, how many people you've coached, how much you make coaching, whatever it is, you're still living through all of that. And you're not then equipped on that inner plane to really be the guide for someone who's looking to drop all of that. So that's what I say, your transformation enables transformation. As you drop those things for yourself and you experience the challenge of dropping those things for yourself, you'll become more authentic. You'll become more real. You'll become humble in a sense. Not humble as in lowering yourself, but just humble as in that ego piece of me that ran the show for so long has been supplanted by the soul that I am. And that soul self expresses itself. And that is pure, raw authenticity. And from authenticity, we notice that people begin to relate to you differently. And one of the reasons is that you have become, in your journey into authenticity, the walking, talking, living embodiment of your highest values. So you're no longer in the world just talking about things like love or kindness or compassion because they sound good and feel good, but you are the living embodiment of that. If you're going to say to people, there should be peace in this world, are you the living, talking, walking embodiment of peace? Because the journey of transformation invites you to look at all of that which stands in the way of you being that which you claim you value. And once you become that which you claim you value, people sense it. They sense when you have walked the walk, and they sense when you're just talking about it. Again, book smarts, a webinar I attended. If you are really, truly committed to your own transformational path, you're going to be invited to really make choices around what you value most in this world, who you choose to be within those values. And the invitation then is to embody them fully and completely. And as I said, continue to look at all the edges where you are not that in this world, so you can do the work of attending to those edges, healing yourself in those ways, so that you can again expand a little further into that state of being. And with that, then you become this resonant embodiment of your highest values. You're going to be creating a space which is replete with that. And that space is what you're inviting people into as a transformational coach, to say, let's sit in this. You may not be there yet. You may still be struggling to even define your values because you've noticed that you've been living through the values that have been imposed upon you since you were a young child, or by your society about what it means to be who you are, or successful or productive or whatever it is. You've been living through those for so long that you've never really gotten in touch with your own value set. And so I invite you to that experience of discovering and journeying into the embodiment of that. And I, your coach, can sit here and say, I understand what it takes. And I understand that it is not easy. I understand that it is a journey of moving into and falling out of. It's kind of living in what's called the liminal space between what is no longer and what is not yet. And that liminal space living, again, like, how do I navigate this? How do I navigate when I feel I want to make progress in an area, like becoming the embodiment of love? And yet I see how often I'm not that. And you, the coach, again, capable of holding a powerful space in which people can connect with the deepest part of themselves and do that essential work of reconfiguring their inner operating system and giving rise to a self-concept that is reflective of the soul and not the ego. So thanks for watching this video. As I said, talking about all things transformational is what we do here on the Deep Coaching channel. Do subscribe if you like this, and we'll see you in the next video.